Merry Christmas! It is go time. It is Christmas, which means we are in the kitchen, we are baking up a storm, we are decorating, wrapping presents, whatever it is. This year is different for a lot of reasons, but that does not mean baking needs to slow down. Instead, maybe it's gonna ramp up because we're gonna make more gift boxes and giveaways for people. So I love all different kinds of cookies and candies, and I love sharing them with you. This is really fun because it's a mini cinnamon roll. It is a cinnamon roll cookie. And I know that sounds kind of out there, but honestly, I think these are easier than regular cinnamon rolls. There's not really a lot of work into them. It's kind of like a no-brainer. You let it sit in the fridge overnight and rise. So easy. So we are just gonna get started. And it has a little bit different process here of getting mixed together. So follow and have fun and just dream of good Christmas, because that's what these are. We're gonna start with some flour. I don't usually sift my flour. Instead, I like to use a scoop, and I scoop it in and overfill my measuring cup, because as I'm doing this, it's pretty much sifting the flour. So if you overfill, you just swipe it off and you put it right in. So that really honestly creates pretty much an environment of sifted flour. And that's just a lot easier, I think. Sifting flour in general, it can come from in like way long ago before there were flour back in the day, so I'm told, or have read, really used to cake up and get lumpy. So that's why a lot of old recipes call for sifting. But if you can kind of do this and just, get it lighter, because if you just slam your cup in there and pack it in, you get way too much flour. So we're putting in the flour, and then to add to that dry ingredients, we're gonna add some sugar. Cinnamon rolls need a little bit of sweetness. Obviously, a lot comes from the filling, that cinnamon sugar filling, and a little bit of an icing or glaze. But you need a little bit in there just to amp it up. A little bit of salt, always a little bit of salt. And then what I'm gonna do is start by hooking on just a regular paddle attachment. You could do this by hand, but what you do now is, I'm gonna mix this up and also just cut the butter in like I'm making a pastry. So you can do that by hand, or you can have it cut in little pieces, and while the mixer's on, I just start throwing the pieces in. That's gonna coat them in flour, and then it's also gonna slowly cut them into the dry ingredients. Now, this amount of butter is making a lot softer dough, and almost like a brioche style dough, which has a lot of butter in it. So it's gonna be a buttery, more richer or enriched dough. They can be stickier and harder to work with. So to make that easier, I put it into the fridge overnight. It rises in the fridge, but then that also makes it more smooth and elastic, so you don't have to do the work, it just sits in the fridge and does it. So I'm gonna let this mix in, kind of get more crumbly, like a pastry, like if you're making a pie, and then turn it off and put the wet ingredients in. So if you come in, you can see that this has really started to break up the butter. You can see it's in a lot smaller pieces, none really bigger than the size of think of a pea. But these flat big pieces, they're okay because they're flattened out. And that's kind of what you want. So when you pick it up, you can cinch it together and it kind of holds, but then it breaks apart really easily. So at this point, you put in some yeast. I use only instant, active, dry yeast. I love instant yeast. It's what I'm used to. It's what I use all the time. If you are not used to it, you can use regular yeast the same way. You just have to bloom it in hot water. I don't do that. Why? It's like taking a step out. Instant yeast, it's wonderful. All of it, that's the only thing I use. So I'm mixing that right into the dry ingredients, because that's what you do with that kind of yeast. You can just mix it in with your dry, give it a whirl. For the wet ingredients, I have some scalded milk. It came down slightly, so it's not piping hot. I added a little bit of water to that. Then I'm just gonna put in my eggs. I'm gonna crack them right into there. I'm gonna mix them up right in there too. Just kind of, you can put a whole egg in like a batter or a dough like this, but the honest thing is, it can be kind of hard to get them to break down. I think it can just be easier to just whisk them up a little bit beforehand. Just to get that yolk broken up, a little bit of that white broken up. It's nothing special. I'm gonna add a little bit of vanilla. Since these are more of a cookie, we're adding a few things that usually to regular cinnamon rolls, you probably wouldn't necessarily add to the dough. But you want the dough to be a little bit more cookie-like, so we're just adding some of those things right to it. So I'm gonna dump this right on top of my dry ingredients, and right before I do, I'm gonna switch out my paddle with the dough hook. If you're doing this by hand, that's fine too. If you're used to an electric mixer, they can just be really handy. So I'm gonna dump all this right in. We're gonna start mixing it up. And then we're gonna let it go until it comes together in just a cohesive mass. It will be a shaggy dough, but it will be together. While it's working, you just may need to scrape down the sides, especially depending on what size mixer you have. That dry ingredients can kind of get caught up on the sides. So just work it in, get it down there so it can keep stirring together, and then just lift it back up, let it keep going. It just takes a few minutes. Like, this is kind of really easy. So you see, it's a complete well, honestly, if this was a normal dough, this would be what? It would be a mess. You would think this isn't right. This doesn't even seem like a dough. It's really wet, it's sticky. Guys, I'm just gonna say it, it's scary. If you're a bread maker, you would say this is not a dough. So as you can see, still with the mixer, there's still some on the bottom. So I'm gonna make sure I mix all of that flour in, because that really just wouldn't be mixed at all otherwise. So as we mix it in, this really is not a kneading process. Instead, this is just creating a cohesive mass, and that's our dough. So you're probably thinking, how is that gonna come together? Well, what we're gonna do is slow it way down by putting it in the fridge. So that yeast is gonna activate really slowly, but it's also gonna create this, honestly, a lot more workable dough. So bear with me. Put all your trust in this. Throw out everything you know about dough. Actually, there are other recipes like this, so some of you probably do know. But we're gonna put it right in there. I'm gonna get every little bit, because I do not like to waste bits. That just seems wasteful. So we're gonna put it all in there. I'm gonna pop a lid on it, saran wrap, whatever you have. Put it in the fridge. Tomorrow, we are gonna make some delicious cinnamon roll cookies. You guys are gonna like these. The dough has rested overnight in the fridge, which I know seems really odd, but look at it. It's kind of harder, which also means, look at this, it's so easy to work with. It's a completely different dough. So you may remember when we were doing it and mixing it up, it was really shaggy, it was really sticky. You would have thought, that does not make any sense. But now it actually, that fridge just really makes it workable. So I'm gonna weigh this just so it makes it easier for me to divide it into 3. On the scale. If you guys want to, don't feel bad if you want to eyeball it. I just think that way it's just a little easier to know if you have it divided, and then you kind of get even amounts when you're doing it. I don't know. So like these aren't even at all. And here I thought I kind of did. So we're gonna put a little bit more on that one, maybe just a little bit more on that one. Okay, we're getting close. I feel like this might be it. Oh, this is pretty good. That one's just too big. So we're gonna put that on there. Okay, so I'm gonna work with one at a time. I'll just cover that up. You could even put it back in the fridge if you wanted to, whatever makes it easier for you. Here, what I'm gonna do is now roll it out. And to do that, you definitely want a little bit of flour. And then I'm gonna take my dough, put a little bit of flour around it just so it makes it easier to work with. I'm gonna smash it a little bit, and then I'm gonna just start rolling it out kind of like you would for cinnamon rolls. The difference is, we're not doing, these are small cookies. So I'm gonna start and just kind of roll it out. Just turn it if you need to every so often, put some flour on your rolling pin. And you want it, if you can, into more of a rectangle as opposed to a circle, which is just like cinnamon rolls. You don't usually want it to be a circle, because when you roll them up then, they aren't. So I'm gonna roll this out into my rectangle, and then we're gonna pretty much make mini cinnamon rolls. Who doesn't like that? Everyone will. I have it rolled out, and you know, it can help just to, if you need to, have a ruler, just so you can kind of make sure, after you make them a few times, because you're gonna be making these a lot, you'll get used to it. So here is one section of the 3 rolled out. In here, I have some brown sugar, some cinnamon. That's obviously what we're kneading. Now, usually with a traditional cinnamon roll sticky bun, you would slather butter in the middle. These have a lot of butter in the actual dough, so we don't actually need to do that. To divide this evenly, I do just kind of measure it out, just so I know. We're gonna spread it out onto our rolled out cookies. It's just kind of a play. I mean, honestly, this is a cinnamon roll. They're just miniature, and so they're so fun to me to have either on a cookie plate, to give away at Christmas, in a cookie box, or even if you want to, and it's like a brunch or a you know, just kind of a breakfast type thing, to have these as just a small thing that you can have with whatever you're having. So you don't need a huge cinnamon roll. Not that you really have a problem with having a huge cinnamon roll, but you know what I mean. So I'm gonna start rolling them up just like you would a cinnamon roll or a jelly roll. A lot of old recipes always will say, roll up as you would for a jelly roll. And then I think in today's world, how many of you make jelly rolls? I don't make them a lot. I have made them, but just not a lot. It's kind of like a cake roll. So we're gonna roll them up. Once you get started, you want it to go tight at first, just because you want that center to be nice and tight and not loose. We're gonna keep rolling. Oh, there we go. Now we're getting this, guys, it smells so good in here. And I kind of like to push it together like that. And then with that seam, I like to keep rolling it back until I see it. There it is. And then I'm gonna go along and I wanna cinch that seam. And pretty tightly and aggressively, because I want that to really stick together. And don't feel bad if you have to even it out a little bit. And I will even put it down like that. Make sure it's really well cinched. And just because I always get scared to cut on a countertop, I'm gonna set it there, I'm gonna get my knife, and then we're just gonna cut it. I'm cutting and just filling up my pan. What's nice about these, unlike cinnamon rolls, as you saw, we really had no rise time. Yes, they were in the fridge overnight and they rose slightly. But now, again, I'm cutting them, putting them on the pan, they don't have to rise. The oven takes care of all that, and it's just a cookie, so you don't need them to get to that perfect height. There's really, these are, what's great about them, they're kind of a no-brainer. You don't really have to think it through, you don't have to make sure you're doing it right. I like to cut it with a knife that has a slight serration. This is actually a cheese knife, which I don't know if that really helps. That's just what I have that has a good serration on it. And that to me just usually goes through pretty easily then that way. And you cut, as you can see, it's like 1/4 to 1/2 inch size, little cookies. And don't feel bad if you want to. If you see as you're cutting them that those ends are coming unstuck, just cinch together where that seam side is. That way, as they bake, hopefully, they won't open up like this one wants to. Just cinch it with your fingers. Just that one too, cinch it. Look how, I love how tight they are. That means you're getting tons of that sugar and cinnamon. Oh, you guys, don't they just look good? I would say they smell good, but that'd almost be mean, right? Because you can't smell them. So I'm gonna pop these into the oven. Super easy. I'm gonna keep cutting, rolling, baking. Isn't that the point of Christmas? We just cut, roll, and bake all the time. And then you'll see how good they look. The majority of the cookies are baked. I have the last pan in the oven, and they puff up as they bake. They're still, like, see how they look like a cookie? It's the perfect little treat. If on the bottom, they get just slightly golden brown. It's nothing too dark, but you can see they just get a little bit of color on them. The center isn't doughy. You can just take them out, let them cool, put them on a rack to cool a little bit more, and then we're gonna mix up a quick frosting. So we're gonna put some butter in. You kinda want it room temperature or just slightly soft, which you can see this one I can kind of smash with my spatula. So it's softened, and I wanna do that just enough so it's gonna make it a lot more workable and a lot more easier to incorporate with everything else. So we have that in there, and that's pretty good. And along with that now, I'm just gonna add in some vanilla. This isn't like a traditional just cinnamon roll frosting. I would say it's better, and it has a little bit more, it's a little bit more luscious maybe. It doesn't have the cream cheese, which to me, there's two camps of frosting. It is cream cheese or not cream cheese. I never grew up with cream cheese frosting on my rolls, which you could do that with this if you wanted to, but this is better. So we're gonna put in some powdered sugar. Again, it's nothing too, it's all really simple ingredients that you're gonna have at home. You're gonna be able just to mix this up pretty easily. Put that in. So I'm just gonna mix this together, whisk it a little bit, and we'll be ready to frost. As you're whisking it together, you can see the consistency. If you wanna thin it down, just add a little bit more of the cream, work that in. And then if yours is too thin, just adjust with a little bit more powdered sugar. It's like that secret that just kind of can smooth over anything. So that's perfect. I want to have just a little bit of good texture to it. Oh, guys, that looks beautiful. To frost them, pretty simple. Gonna take a cookie. I'm gonna put some frosting on it. And I just like to spread it around. When they have just a little bit of warmth, not hot because then it's just gonna melt off, but just a little bit of warmth. It kind of coats them better. It kind of wants to then fall into the cracks a little bit better. That's what you want. You want those nooks and crannies to be just filled with this delicious frosting. Look at that, guys. These are cookies. I think especially with kids, how fun is this to have like a special little cookie treat? You can use these for so many times. And honestly, this is not just a Christmas recipe. I think you're probably gonna have this on repeat. Maybe weekly, it depends. Because these are so good. I'm gonna frost the rest of them. No, I'm gonna try them, you guys. I'm gonna eat one. Why would I wait? I like to have them when they're just a little warm. So just like a cinnamon roll. That's so good. You can see the swirls, but then you get all that, the cinnamony sugar in the middle and that wonderful baked dough and then a little bit of frosting on top. It is such a little like melt in your mouth treat. That rich dough. Guys, these are so good. Frost them. I love to keep them in the freezer. Just freeze them one flat at a time. And then once they're frozen, put a piece of parchment on top and do another flat and keep doing that. They store in the freezer for over a month if it's in an airtight container. Give them as gifts around Christmas, around the holidays. They are so fun to use. So as always, share this video around because sharing these videos really helps me. Check the website, wiseguy.com, for more great videos and recipes and a whole bunch of how-tos. I love spending Christmas with you, so thank you for inviting me into your home so we can do this together. Let's go make some cookies, some little cinnamon roll treats, because these are good.